Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
From now until the US presidential elections in November, we'll be convening a pair of guests in America each week to pick and discuss standout moments of the campaign as we try to divine the big issues on which the voters will finally decide whether Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump clinch the White House. This week, our guests are senior political correspondent of MTV News, Anna-Marie Cox, and former director of strategy for David Cameron, now political commentator Steve Hilton.
America great again.
We'll fix it together.
Well, good evening to both of you, as yet again it has been a pretty extraordinary week of claim and counterclaim and great praise, for example, for President Putin from Donald Trump. But first of all, Anna-Marie, what caught your attention this week in the campaign?
Well, that Commander-in-Chief forum was something else. It was really full of all kinds of moments that really would make you question, I think, Trump's suitability for president. The moment that I felt like really stood out for me was not one of the more grandstanding ones. It was actually very subtle. A female veteran who works with veterans who suicide prevention asked about that issue, which is a terrible issue here in the States. And she said something about how 20 veterans a day commit suicide, and Trump corrected her. I think that says a lot about who he is as a person and what he does and doesn't know about the military.
Well, let's have a look at that.
And actually, it's 22, and it's almost impossible to conceive that this is happening in our country.
But actually, Anna-Louise, he was trying to be sympathetic, though, wasn't he?
Well, he was, but I think in the entire answer, what he does throughout that answer is he betrays that he really doesn't know what the issue is. He keeps on saying they need help, they need help, they need help, and then he says something about how they might be killing themselves over the long wait times they have for physical health issues at the VA, and that's not. For one thing, to say they need help, they need help, they need help is a little condescending. All Americans need help. All veterans need help. The suicide epidemic is an issue that has to do with, creating social networks, creating a better social safety net for these veterans.
Well, Steve Hilton, isn't the problem that this actually makes Donald Trump sound very glib? There's just another thing that he can kind of toss out the way.
I think that it's kind of marginal to the real appeal that he has, which is precisely that he doesn't speak in the same carefully crafted way that other politicians do. That is really the source of his appeal, and I think that that's what's really become evident this week, where the polls have tightened and this looks like a race that is essentially tied.
It is interesting now because he's talking in a different language now, because he's saying things like, we must keep this secret. This is something, how I am going to deal with the Middle East is something that you'll only find out if you actually make me president, Steve Hilton.
But there's an argument that actually, in which he's made very directly, which is that being unpredictable in relation to foreign and security and defense policy is actually a good idea, that it's not a good idea to telegraph your intentions to your enemies if you want to beat them. And so I think there is actually the kernel of a substantive argument underlying that kind of remark.
Now, I want now to look at something that actually has dogged Hillary Clinton, not just through this campaign, but also when she was Secretary of State, and that is the whole issue of her health. And she had an extended coughing fit, and I just want to show you a little of it now.
I've been talking so. Every time I think about Trump, I get allergic.
Now, Anne-Marie, millions have seen this clip. Of course, this is almost what YouTube has been made for. But is there a serious issue here about the way that people are viewing both candidates, but particularly Hillary in terms of stamina?
Oh, you know, I mean, I am sorry that we had to watch that again. I think that this is really a sideshow issue, if it's an issue at all. Millions of people saw that clip. You know what people didn't see? A week ago, she actually released a mental health platform that dealt with suicide of veterans really directly. I haven't heard anyone talk about that. So there are real issues in this country that I think we need to be talking about. I think her health is pretty marginal. I mean, I get postnasal drip all the time. I don't know, like maybe that's what's going on with her. Donald Trump's doctor is also not really made me confident about his health, but I'd prefer to just sort of get to the issues if we can.
Well, Steve Hilton, something like this, though, is seized upon because of her past health problems. You know, is she healthy enough to be commander-in-chief? This is what not only Trump, but people in Trump's campaign were feeding out.
I agree, actually, with what we just heard about this. I think that one of the things I greatly admire about Hillary Clinton, not necessarily all the positions she takes and her policy platform, but you can't deny that she is an incredibly strong, tough, resilient politician. She's been through everything for decades, and she's still there fighting away for the things she believes in. And so I think the notion that there's a health problem there just doesn't, I agree, it doesn't feel like a serious part of the campaign and shouldn't be treated as such.
Interesting, if you look at one statistic, that it's been 227 days since Hillary Clinton held a press conference, and she's just held a press conference at Anne-Marie Cox. What does that say, do you think, about the way that she wants to campaign?
I wonder if she held that press conference because she realized she really knocked it out of the park at that commander-in-chief forum. Maybe she had a little bit of courage and momentum underneath her. I'm one of the people that feels like our press corps doesn't really necessarily do a great job covering the presidential campaign when they have press conferences. I think more press conferences are better. I hope she gives more of them. I hope whatever prompted this, she does more. I think that we can do our part in the press to make this more about issues without her having to give a press conference.
Well, Steve Hilton, if you were advising Hillary Clinton, would you say to get out in front of the press or actually stay away?
I think it's not really to do with whether she's in front of the press. It's to do with whether or not she has a message that really mobilizes people and persuades them that she'd make a great president. I think the problem right now for her is that she doesn't really have that. Her only message is that she's not Donald Trump, and that's not getting anyone sufficiently excited or engaged in her campaign.
Thank you both very much. Until next week. Thank you.